You know, when I think of Christina Lewis, I really think of I think of three things. Three things really come to mind. The first, actually in no particular order. One is that Christina is a really proud, I could tell, mommy and wife. I think above everything, she's really proud. I think she just exudes, I love being a mother. I love being a wife. I cherish this. I think that's very important, right? So that's even, I think, one of the reasons why we connect. So that's one. Secondly, is Christina strikes me as someone who very much cares about legacy and impact. And I truly see her as a social entrepreneur. A matter of fact, I think her activity around, in particular, Black Lives Matter and the initiatives that she's created, you know, since then, which you know, we'll definitely touch on, that it proves she's truly a social entrepreneur. And then the third is, I adore how much attention and focus she puts into sustaining the legacy of her father. That to me touches me, right? And it makes me want to fight for her and the family and the legacy. And that's the reason why, you know, I wanted to be here to have this conversation with her. So none other than, let's bring her on. Let's bring her on. Let's bring on Christina Lewis. Let's see if we can make this slide on. Look at that. Look at that. Christina, how are you doing? How are you doing?
I am so good, Paul. You know, I am going to be hard to live up to all that, but that was just an amazing introduction. Each time I just hear more from you and learn more about you and Jill, it's just even more inspiring. Thank you. Thank you. And
yeah. I mean, you know, I'm just here to, we're all here to thank you. And we're here to thank your family, you know, and this was, as you know, this is our book club. This is the final meeting of our book club. We've had hundreds and hundreds of people sign up. And you know what I found really interesting is most people who signed up had already read the book.
Yeah, I wanted to say hello to everyone, to all of your you know, your listeners and these readers. That I am really excited to be here and you know, to meet you all and to converse with you, and really honored. It means so much to me that you have that you've read the book, that you're reading the book. As Paul said, that is our purpose here. And I'm just so excited to hear what you all think about it. And you know, Paul, that you've been one of the people to really, you know, we've connected and who've talked so much about how the book changed your life in such a dramatic way. But you know, if you listen to the Audible introduction, you know, that you're not alone. You know, that there are many, in fact, virtually every successful Black entrepreneur in business has read the book, you know, like really successful ones. It is amazing. So you're also part of a you know, you're part of a group. I think, you know, one of the leaders who go out and read the book and didn't just read it, but also went and had careers and started businesses, you know, like you have. So it's, you know,
so this is what you just said. I think is one of the most intriguing parts of the legacy of the book, is because I find it, I think I shared this with your mother, is I feel like knowing that you read the book is like a secret handshake at parties. You know, it's, you know, when you have, you know, that one-on-one in the corner of a cocktail party and you're talking about different experiences and you mention the book, that's the moment where it's like, okay, we're connected. Right, we're in a special way. When you just think of the impact, I mean, let's just think, because we have people from all over the world, you know, who read the book. Right, you said virtually every successful Black entrepreneur has read the book, and I can attest, everyone I know has. Do you feel weight on your shoulders to continue to further the legacy? Because to me, it seems like there's a lot of responsibility that you have.
So do I feel weight to carry the legacy? I mean, yes. Why should white guys have all the fun? It's been this amazing manual for so many different people. Now, for me, my story, I didn't read this book until I was 25. Oh, and it came out when I was 15, because it was just so hard to grapple with, and that was just one sign of how difficult it was. Because for me, I mean, obviously I'd lived it, so I knew the hype, I'd gotten the unfiltered version, right? So but it's pressure to be perfect, and pressure to always give it 110%. And that was a lot to deal with. But I think that maybe that a lot of your listeners here and you yourself sort of struggle with this sometimes. Like, as Black people, I think we all know that we're here standing on the shoulders of giants, right? And we think about I think about Rosa Parks, I think about Martin Luther King, I think about all the people who made it possible that I can vote, in this country. So I think against that, feel like we all have this pressure, right? That, we have to go and deserve this. But yes, the legacy is a lot. I'm lucky to have friends like you, and and others, and family who've helped me learn and gain more. And if you've follow, we connect on Instagram a lot, and so if you follow me on Instagram at the Christina99, you've heard me talk about mental health,
Yes.
wellness, yes, and how much I invest in my children, and my husband and my relationships, and that all comes from ultimately reading, and imbibing like this book and everything about hard work that it talks about, but also the balance, that you do need to focus on your health. Work in your career is not the most important thing, right? And that's what I love also about you, Paul, and Jill. It's clear that your boys are thriving, your marriage is thriving, and so so you're working like crazy, right?
Yeah.
But I'm sure that if something ever went wrong with your family or it needed attention, that just immediately, okay, I have to reprioritize here, because, I know what's really important. So,
Yeah,
so that's just some of the.
1,000%. 1,000%. So Christina, I see people are starting to drop questions in here.
Oh, great.
And I think what we'll do is I'll pull them, because we'll just kind of float around. I have an idea of what I want to do, but we'll ebb and flow. But one question that popped up from Deborah Allen Rogers, and I think this is a great kickoff question, is she wants to know, is this the same for women? And I think she's referring back to when we were talking about that secret handshake. And for me, I'll give you my observation is, all of those conversations have been with men, Black men.
Yeah. So the book is really a great book, and we want everyone to read it. And I've had people who come up to us and to my mother and others are of all races and women. I find this book personally inspirational. Many women, Carla Harris, who's a leading banker, is just one of many, many, many who are inspired by the book. And sometimes I do think that that we want to broaden the readership. I mean, he's just a businessman. He's not a. You don't kind of want him to be kind of have the segregated readership necessarily, but so the book is totally inspiring for many, many women. However, there is something unique happening with men, that I found who read it, that that I think they tend to connect with each other a little more. Now, I don't know this. You would know better than I, like firsthand. It does tend to be that the people who come to us who just are really all in just have tended to be male. Also, he was in a fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi. I don't know if there are any noobs in this chat.
I think there are.
Shout it out. So he was in this fraternity, and yes, there we go. And so many pledges in this fraternity. From what I know, they actually read this book as part of the pledge process, and that a lot of Kappas are entrepreneurs and are businessmen. So that is an actual fraternity. And so that may be why, even if you aren't a part of that fraternity, if you read the book, it kind of like filters in that way. So some of his biggest fans are also people who happen to be in this, in the Kappas.
Yeah.
So
good deal. You know what's interesting is too. I can always gauge the crowd by the questions that are posed, and it's clear we have a lot of hardcore business, either execs and entrepreneurs, because already I see questions coming in around, all right, let's talk about some of these deals. Let's talk about some of these memories around these deals. So here's where I want to go is, let's go back to what is the first memory that comes to mind of your father. So when I say first memory is, whenever you think you hear his name,
yeah.
What comes to your mind? What do you think of?
Oh, well, I mean, the first memory is him coming home from work, or actually coming. It's Paris. He didn't mean first memory in my life, but just the first image is coming home from work, especially when we were living in Paris. We moved there in 1988, so I was 8 years old then, and he lived in New York half the month. So he'd be in New York for 2 weeks and in Paris for 2 weeks with us. So when he came back, every month, right? Like he'd come back. That was always a big moment. And, and so often I'd be there and he'd come in and I could see him, from the kitchen or from the dining room. And that was always really exciting. I'd come and I'd hug him and we'd have stories and he'd be back for dinner. It wasn't the same, it wasn't the same in the house when he wasn't there.
Yeah.
So yeah, and he always had, he had his uniform, he was coming in from work, the suit, so many of those and tie. So yeah, that's big. And hearing the door close. And that was true at the brownstone too. We'd be, I'd already be downstairs, dinner would be getting ready, and he'd come home for dinner, but he'd come home like just in time, like not kind of hanging out before. So I'd hear that door slam and I'd know that he'd be home.
And he's there.
Yeah.
What was he like in the house, right? Mm-hmm. Because, it's interesting, my, with my boys, Kingston and Liam, whenever I hear them characterize me, it's funny because when I think of my relationship with them, I think, okay, I'm the jokey dad, we hang out. Like I think of myself, okay, I'm the cool dad, right? But their interpretation is like, no, dad, he works a lot. Like he works and he's strict. That's of me, right? What was he like in the house?
In the house. Oh, well, I have to say, similar to you. I mean, he was strict. They were both strict. And, my mom's here, by the way, she's over there, like listening. I'm surprised she hasn't chatted.
Tell us hello.
But let's see. He, in the house, so he was very organized, right? So he had an office in the house and it was always very nice. But actually they'd be open. Right, so his office at our brownstone, 351, this is where we lived before Paris, was also our TV room, right? So he would like even be in there and kind of work or like get things while I'd be watching TV, And the place was completely clean. He had everything in his briefcase, like all his papers, etc. So his desk was empty. All it had was a calculator, a phone, a yellow legal pad, and a pen, a certain kind of pen, and his stereo. So he was, so I always knew where to find him. So he was always working, but he didn't mind being interrupted. So if I needed something, it wasn't like, I wouldn't, it was fine to go in and get something. Oh, we need this. And I had questions. I didn't, he was distant enough. I didn't go in and like bother him all the time. I didn't feel comfortable saying, oh, Dad, like come build this Lego house with me, because I knew that he needed to work. But so that was it. That was, and that was during the week. And then on weekends, we'd do trips. He would, but he had his own space a lot. And then when he'd do things with us, like we'd go out for trips, we'd go out shopping, like we would, he taught me how to ride a bike, which was really great. And but yeah, and then a lot of it was at meals, so at meals, and we had these really long dinners, especially in Paris, at least an hour. And we couldn't leave. But even at 351 growing up, the dinner, I used to say it was like a prison. Like once you sit down,
That's it.
you're never getting up. I had to ask permission to be excused. And they'd say no. It wasn't like there were courses. But a lot of talking, and he'd talk about things that had happened that day, current events, there'd be debate. I was expected to speak, Leslie was expected to speak, presentations, quizzes. We had this game called Math, History, or Literature. That I enjoyed, right? Where we'd pick a topic and then, and he'd give us a question in it, like, okay, math, there was this, like word problems and other things like that he'd come up with. And I would be so excited to go and impress him and try to prove myself. My sister loved to tell, she's an actress and producer, and she loved to perform. And so she'd tell like elaborate jokes that she came up with. And, we were all, he was, even before he was so successful, he was just a charismatic, impressive guy. So when he was there, I think he all just naturally wanted to go and do, and be, not entertain him. It was just us, but it was the dinner table was a place where we, where there was a lot of talking. I'll say, talking. And whining, sometimes whining.
He seems, he comes off in photographs and in video footage and interviews I've seen talking with your mother, that he was incredibly magnetic, incredibly charismatic, to the point where extraordinarily charismatic, But I want to dig into the meals a little bit, because I saw you reshare one of the stories that I mentioned, and it was fascinating how you endorsed the idea. And it sounds like this is exactly what's happened to you here. And so, what I shared on Instagram was that one of the things I learned working with Enver Yücel and Oprah Winfrey was really how elaborate the dinners were, and this notion of never eating alone. Long dinners, lots of courses, but the objective was always, let's use this as a learning experience. Let's bring lots of different minds together, no matter the age, no matter the discipline, and let's share among each other. So who were, if I could ask, who were some of the invitees to this dinner? Was it just family, or were you entertaining others?
It's interesting you ask that question, and the answer is no. We almost never invited anyone to the house. We almost never had anyone, except for family, but we almost never had anyone else at dinner in the house, and we almost never went out to eat. Only on special occasions. In fact, it was only later after he passed away that I that we started even doing takeout. Like we never had takeout. We didn't, we had, again, except for something special. We had like a few restaurants we'd go to sometimes, but it really wasn't a thing. So no, we didn't have very many family friends, like where you go to someone's house and you all stay there and visit. And I have many people like that now, who are sort of friends, but almost, family. There was none of that. There was, our actual relatives, and we had a lot in the Philippines and elsewhere. But from later, and also from the book, as people know, he did do that professionally. So he would have lunches with people and he read about, and he definitely got around. I mean, to this day in New York City, many of the people you mentioned, my social entrepreneurship, I founded All Star Code. It's a nonprofit that teaches computer science, but focused on Black and Latino boys because they were being overlooked. So that's a nonprofit. We have to do fundraising. We found many of the people who are fans of my father's I met had actually met him. And this is, he died 27, almost 28 years ago. So he really, so he really networked a lot, but he did that on his, in his professional life. It wasn't a part of what we did as a family, except he would have very large parties. That's what he'd do. So he'd do it all at once. It's called All Star Code, Sherry. I just have to get that in. So he'd do very large parties. And I can't remember if these are in the book. Once we had a house in Amagansett, a second home, and then also in Paris for his birthday. He would do, we would have this lavish sit-down dinner, but inside the house. So we'd rent tables and go, and that would be a seated dinner, a lot, 40, 50 people. I would get dressed up, I'd sit there, and it would sort of function as a Christmas party. And then similarly, like when my sister turned 18, he let her have a big dinner there, but that was just for her and her friends. But so he had these big dinners and he'd invite people. For their 20th wedding anniversary at our house in Amagansett, there was a big dinner, and it was a mix of family, and I really only paid attention to the family. But later, as I've met people who were there, I saw that there were some key business people there, and he played tennis, and he went to a tennis club where we'd have people to the tennis court. And I found later that, this was a Canadian, multi-millionaire mogul whose name I'm forgetting. And he would come, and you're going to like this. After tennis, if he was feeling really good, he would go to our pool and skinny dip.
Oh my goodness. No, really.
I'd be like,
oh my goodness. Oh, so that's how you knew he was feeling. That's how you know he won.
Yeah. Just like, oh my God, Dad. Again.
Oh my gosh. I love it. I'm going to start this. That's it. That's what I'm doing.
Not in the book, is it?
Yeah. No, that, what? So clearly that was him unwinding, Mm-hmm. How did he unwind? So tennis, right? Connecting with family, clearly, that family time, skinny dipping, What do you feel like he ever fully disconnected from the grind, from the hustle? Did he do that? Because this is something that I have a very hard time with. Even this morning, Jill said, we've had such a great year. This is literally what she said. She said, after you talk to Christina today, let's just unwind for the next couple of days. Let's do for the next 5 days. And I said, I can't. I said, I'm sorry, I can't. I said, we can have more time to relax, but I can't disconnect. Did he ever fully disconnect? And if so, what was he doing during that time?
like disconnect for a whole 8 days, 10 days.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not sure he did. He would, for like shorter spurts. So we would go at Christmas to a resort somewhere. And these were a big deal. We'd actually, but he would join us. He would join us a few days later. He wouldn't necessarily travel with us. And what he'd do is we'd fly through San Juan usually, something. So he'd fly through San Juan and he'd stop and he'd gamble. Although he quit gambling. He said because it got too expensive. So he knew how to rein it in. But, so he did. He he liked to gamble, and even at home we would play Tonk, which is the Southern game. Tonk?
Yes, I do know Tonk. That's wild. Yes. Why do I know Tonk? Yeah, I think my father's from South Carolina. That must be one.
Yeah. But he'd insist that we play for money. He was like, it's not fun if we're not playing for money. So he'd hand out the quarters. We'd play with quarters, so it's not like he wasn't the bank. But then, we always had to play for money. And so, he enjoyed it. So we had fun with that at home. Let's see, in springy bank. So no, he would always, even on vacation, he'd do a little work in the morning. So there, and maybe sometimes it was just alone time. I don't think it wasn't. He wouldn't be doing like a ton of work, like calls necessarily. There was never any sense that like huge business was being conducted. Like, but yeah, almost every day he'd be in there and he'd work. And in Springy Banks, which was our house before he bought TLC Beatrice, he had this balcony off of the room that he used as his study. And again, it was very open, right? Like the house at Springy Banks, there were almost no doors, just to the bedroom. So we could, but he would sit out on this porch. He tried to quit the cigar, but he had a hard time with it. But so yeah, he'd go out, he'd smoke. Not something he's proud of, something he does not want people to emulate, didn't want people to emulate. But yeah, would still be out there and work. But he'd grill, taught me how to ride a bike, we'd swim, he played tennis.
Yes.
He loved culture. That's what he'd do with my mom. I'm sure she talked about it, but we'd go to shows, Alvin Ailey, Dance Theater of Harlem. We loved those. Art. He loved buying art. And collecting, and really appreciated art and artists. He loved good food. He liked to go for drives, and we would go for walks.
Okay, right. I love it. One of the stories that your mom told that I will never forget is when she talked about how he kind of got her back to his apartment in New York, but how he basically was talking about these beautiful watercolors that he had purchased in Europe. And I was thinking to myself, wow, so such a young man, and he just had this early love for art, right? But I always wondered, where did that come from? Because I'm familiar with Baltimore. I know Baltimore. I know Virginia State, right? Where did that passion for art come from?
Well, he had a passion for the finer things in life, I think, from his grandfather, Sam Cooper, who was a maitre d' at a country club. And in the book, it talks about how my dad would grow up, and on special nights, his grandfather would serve him like he was one of the, guests at the country club. Right. And I always thought about that, obviously this was an all white country club, right? But here at home, Sam Cooper's grandfather was sort of showing my dad, this is how, like, you should be treated, like giving him that feeling that this is what you deserve. So I think from that, and then being a busboy at the country club, I think he heard, you can listen, right? You can listen as people are going and talking about things. And so I know that's how he understood how the rich lived and the kind of life that they had, and how business sort of just got a sense of it from what he saw there. But art in particular and his style, I mean, my grandmother, who's still alive, she is 95 years old,
Bless her.
just in September, was very stylish. Yeah, very, very stylish, and has grace, and and knows how to put things together. But he's really the only one who has art. And if you want to see here, you see like back behind me,
Yes.
that's a Charles Alston, a Black artist.
Yes. Yes.
That's one of his paintings that he bought. One of those many paintings.
It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. You know, for the first time, I'm questioning something in my mind. Was your father introverted or extroverted?
Oh, I'd say he was extroverted, but he didn't need his alone time.
Okay. Okay. That's and the reason why I say this is because you talked about the alone time in the morning on vacations, right? And so for me, everyone says, "Oh, Paul's this extrovert." Blah blah blah. I'm actually an introvert,
Mm-hmm.
and I just know how to turn it on. When I need to. When I need to step into the room, I step into the room. But I much rather unwind, with a good book,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I source my energy. But that's interesting. So you say he was extroverted though.
I mean, I think the definition of extrovert is, does talking to people give you energy,
Yes.
or does it take away energy? And I think he would become overwhelmed because there would be so many people who want things from him, and yes, the pressure to perform and put on the persona, but he really got energy from talking to people. And it's in the book, how he'd call his mother, and he'd be talking to her about business, and other things. And she's a wonderful woman, right? And she has a lot of common sense and wisdom, but she's not she wasn't a businesswoman, right? He was calling her because he needed someone that he could trust, who would listen as he talked things over. So I think an introvert would do that on their own, right? And there are stories of people like that he would use. He would, he'd talk to people and say, "Let me give you a presentation." And I'm doing a pitch tomorrow. Let me practice it on you. And so you'd go and you'd practice on the person, or talk to people and ask their advice, call all around. So that's why I'd say that he was an extrovert, because that's how it was a crucial part of his working process.
Interesting. That's interesting. Yeah. All right. So there are, a few questions in here. I'll keep going back and forth. But one, I find this interesting. Reginald Carter wants to know, did he learn, is it Tagalog? Is it Tagalog? Tagalog from your mother. Did he learn that?
No, he learned a few words, but no, that's not something that he learned, that he did learn. I'm sorry to say. I don't know it. I don't know very much either. My sister knows more. Leslie.
Okay. All right. Another one here is, how many times has Christina read this book? And what was your first, and what was the very first lesson that you learned from the book?
From the book. Ooh, it's hard to remember. So I first read it when I was 25, right? Overall. Then I read it a second time, like fully, more recently. And now I've been listening to the Audible, although actually I haven't listened to the whole thing on Audible. So I would guess it's only 3 times that I've really read it, that I kind of like read it as a book. But I go and I pick it up all the time at different family events. I pick sections and I read from them. As we're doing, as you know, this is like my side hustle, right? I haven't talked about my actual sort of what I do.
Yeah, what do you do,
My
Christine?
two nonprofits. But yeah, as part of the side hustle, I have to, like, I go through, I pick out quotes, I'm like looking up facts. So I've gotten pretty familiar with it. But in fact, some of the, so yeah. But what do I do? Thank you. Thank you for asking, Paul.
What do you do?
Well, I am a social entrepreneur. I'd say I'm a likes to do gooder who really enjoys starting things, from the ground up. So All Star Code, which I already talked about, which is about diversifying computer science and tech pathways. But I just founded a new organization called Give Black.
Yes.
And it is inspired by the Black Lives Matter post George Floyd's murder. And we're about creating racial equity in giving. Now, you may not know, but of the Americans give $450 billion a year away to charity, but less than 4% of that goes to Black organizations, like Black-led, controlled by Black people. So what we're doing is we're highlighting Black organizations so that to elevate them so that they can get more resources, especially funding. And the first way is through the first easy to use searchable database of all Black nonprofits. So if you know someone who has a tax exempt organization that's founded by a Black person, then you can just submit your organization, and we vet every organization, just ensure that paperwork is in order, et cetera, and it can go up on the site. And people can come and can donate to the site, can donate to the organizations through the site. But we're doing a lot of, I could go into it, but we're also working with a lot of other organizations that help get money to charities, of sharing with them these Black organizations.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal cause. When you created it, and I saw the information, what I did is I started looking at some of the data in the UK, because I was in the UK at the time.
Yeah.
And the organization I supported was actually a museum, a Black museum in Brixton.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found interesting is I posted, they responded, they said, "Oh, thank you so much." They then started talking about the deficit that Black nonprofits have in the UK. So
yeah.
This is a global issue.
It is.
Yeah.
It is a global issue, and that's something that we that we look at. We could talk about that, about like our expansion to the UK. There are just some, we're a startup. We're actually all volunteer, virtually all volunteer at this point. But yes, it is a global problem, and African charities, there's a huge problem because so much philanthropy goes into Africa, but it often goes to white-led, European-based organizations,
right,
that then go and hire local workers. But I want to make clear that this is about. We hope that people will give more to charity. Americans only give about 2% of their income to charity, but this year people are being more charitable, and we're saying, well, as you're giving more, really think about giving Black, because by giving Black, you're promoting racial equity in giving.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah.
So how, I know these are the questions that you probably get and you say, how am I supposed to know? These very hypothetical questions. But I feel compelled to ask you also because Jane, who just dropped a question, who's from France actually, wants to know, she said, "I'd love to know more about your sister." And she wants to know about more of your mother's time running the company after your father's passing. And I'll get to that, but to segue to that is, how do you believe your father would be responding to culture today, to Black Lives Matter, to a buffoon in the White House? I'm sorry, this is me, right? To what is very clear is to be this continual, what I think is very methodical, attack on Black business. Like, how do you think he would be responding to today? Because what I think a lot of people miss with the story of your father is they look at this prominent businessman, they see lots of photos, and maybe they don't see lots of Black people in the photos, but I don't think they understand how influential and impactful he was to Black culture. Whether it was supporting Jesse Jackson early, I think your father took enormous political risk early. So how would he be responding? What would he be doing today? What do you think?
Sure. Well, yes, he was Jesse Jackson's largest funder, but didn't tell anyone.
Right.
By design, because that might feel threatening. That might have hurt his political chances. But he was something that white politicians have, which is an early but major donor. So the first check that he wrote for Jesse Jackson was $100,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
The first one.
The first one. And then the other big donation he gave was that Jesse's Reverend Jackson's campaign plane was my dad's plane. And the way that works is that my dad pays the company, for it. So that's how, if you give the plane to like other people, you can loan out your plane, but you have to pay for it. And that was very, very impactful. And you can read the articles about it. There is an article that literally says, wow, the Jesse Jackson campaign is showing more professionalism than people expected. They have a plane, they're like whizzing all around the country. And it's like, no, it's not professionalism, it's just money. This campaign is so professional. No, they just have money, right, to fly around. So that is, so I think that is really the best example of kind of thing that he'd be doing. So today, I think that he would be digging deep into his contacts. And you said that thing about having private events and bringing in, key people, the CEO of this, the mayor, other people, getting them together and hearing about what's happening now. And what's going to happen tomorrow. He'd be doing that and convening people and saying, well, who is the person who? So that might be who is the political candidate who is going to bring reparations, into the mainstream. Like, who are the best scholars like working on reparations right now? And he'd probably look at that and he'd probably fund them, in the way that Jackson was doing, or more, given how things are today. He'd look at, not to say unpopular, but causes that are really focused on, on Black people and helping them in a way that the mainstream isn't doing yet, to sort of take a trend and increase it. I think that in business, he would be actively looking for talent to go and back strongly to help supercharge people, give them their first break. And he was doing that before. He had Arthur Ashe, the tennis pro, had a you can do something where you like mentor an athlete, right? I don't know how familiar people are with this, but that's how it works. Like, if you have young athletes, like before, it's like an angel investor for athletes, right? They can get sponsored, etc. So my dad had Arthur Ashe had pinpointed this athlete for him. And my dad, he would talk about it a little bit. He'd say, he'd give him money and stuff to sort of sponsor him, to pay for him to compete. Unfortunately, the kid ended up not making it, but he was doing that a lot. He had a chef who was notable for being the first Black chef at Tavern on the Green.
Wow.
Okay. In Central Park. So my father, met him, like heard about him, went and backed him on his restaurant.
Interesting. Okay.
But again, it unfortunately, that one also, I think, didn't didn't necessarily. I need to find one of the ones that succeeded.
No,
There were
no,
artists.
but the ones that didn't, I mean, this is very powerful, because I think those are just two examples. I mean, I can't, there must be dozens and dozens of examples where it wasn't only your father giving the money, but he was also giving his expertise.
Yes.
And even though those initial projects maybe didn't return on investment, think of how life-changing that was, you know, and inspirational that was. I think these are phenomenal stories. They're successes, for sure. Yeah.
Someone in the chat asked about just what he'd be doing in business.
Okay.
And while obviously it's hard to answer that, but I did ask Michael Milken this precise question, since he'd be in a bit more of a position to know. And he thinks that Dad would have moved into industrials.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
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 Well, because that's where the money is. You know, sometimes there's, you know, the financial press is really interesting, you know, because the press can only report on what business people tell them. You know, they can't, you know, they can report on what's announced, on what becomes public, you know. And then sometimes, then they dig into people, like if someone becomes like politically important, like the Koch brothers, you know, then okay, then journalists will go and like dig in, because the Koch brothers, people know, have a private business, right? So if you have a public business and it's on the stock exchange, it opens you to public scrutiny because the public can own your stock. But if you have a private business, and you just own that, right? So there is, you know, so you don't have to disclose very much, you know, at all. And the press don't necessarily have a reason to, you know, to write about you. So if you're the Koch brothers, you do something politically controversial, the press will come and you learn all about them. But there are so many rich business owners, you know, who are white, right? Who are incredibly rich and have incredibly successful businesses, thriving businesses, that you've never heard of now, and that the press like barely even knows about, and because they don't want any press, and there's no reason to write about them, you know, like there's, you know, they're just going around. I mean, they have this company that their father made, that their grandfather, you know, put together, that they started, and these businesses, so say industrials, what happens with these businesses is that there's a high barrier to entry. You know, you have to have assets that Black people, you know, don't have because they were prevented from having them, you know, or they were stolen, right? Like your family owns land, you know, in this area, right? That, you know, that then they took and they converted and, you know, worked at and built into something, you know, or there's this department store or, you know, businesses that existed before. So my father, though, having just a lot more capital than, I mean, you know, he was the first. So he had more capital earlier than any other, you know, successful African American today would have gone into this business, because it would be an area where, again, he'd be the only one. Like, for instance, take like tech companies. You know, tech companies they're a terrible way to make money, actually. But what it is it's accessible, because you don't need any money to start one. And of course, we now know you need access and etc. But it's true that, you know, you just build this software, and if you know how to do it, right, you don't need to have like $1 million, you know, or $2 million to go in. So it's a low barrier to entry. Similarly, you know, real estate. Even as long as you can get a loan, like anyone can get into it. So these are very popular ways of starting businesses, and they're good ones. You know, they're good ones, but there are many others.
Wow.
many others.
That was a masterclass right there that you just gave. I hope everyone really picked that up. That was a masterclass. I literally was looking. I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I have nothing to write down notes with. I wanted to write down notes at the time. That was a masterclass. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Someone mentioned here in the questions, by the way, I know there are a lot of people posing questions in the chat, but if you use Q&A for your questions, that way I can pull from there. Someone had mentioned that your, where was it here? Ulysses Youngblood said he was aware that your father wanted to get into mass communication. Do you believe he would have done that? And I wasn't aware that that was part of the strategy. So is that the case, that he was interested in mass communication?
I hadn't heard that.
Okay. So Ulysses, if you could let us know, more on that.
Something about my mother's time running the company.
Exactly.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, let's get into that, because one of the things that I hope I was able to unveil, at least for the BWP community, is how impactful your mother was in the business. I mean, I just think that is a underreported part of the legacy. Is, I mean, she was critical in what I consider saving, the business. So please, talk to us a little bit about your mother's participation, because my biggest surprise was actually not how important her role was, but my biggest surprise was that, from my interpretation of what she said, she wasn't actively involved until after the passing of your father. That was a shock to me, because she had to get up to speed so quickly. So how do you view your mother's role in the business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, my mother is amazing, and the way she just launched herself in, I mean, so few women could do that, just going in and taking charge. I will just mention that Gene Fugit, my father's younger brother, ran TLC Beatrice for a year, right after my dad's death, and she took over for him. And he stepped aside. And she brought, just a steadying perspective and weight to the role, and determination. That was really important. That was really important at the time, and I think extended calm and and a sense of purpose to the to the business. And it also made clear that this was a family business.
Yes.
To some extent. Then she ultimately liquidated the company, but it was there's a New York Times article about her, because she was in fact she was the it was the largest women-owned company in America, perhaps, or she was the CEO. It was the largest woman-run business, in America. It was amazing. She was on the cover of Working Woman for that. It's written about that she, she sold off a lot of assets, like took the, my dad, as you heard, he delivered big, but he also liked to live big, right? And so there was really fancy offices, and the plane. So my mom sold the plane, like just downgraded to downgraded to a less flashy, cheaper, existence, instead of trying to recreate the magic, and fully step into his role. Because if my father had still been alive, he would have started trying to acquire more companies, and he was in this growth phase. Right. And my mom came in and had the, I think, wisdom to say, okay, we're just gonna hang on to this, right? And not try to get too fancy, or try to kind of continue and do exactly what he would have done. And she was also bringing, I think, a protector, sort of spirit. It was very scary for her and my sister, who were both on the board of TLC Beatrice. My mom had not been on the board before. What happened is, she inherited, so she had the not exactly controlling stake, but she was the controlling shareholder, in TLC Beatrice with his, with his passing. So obviously she then came onto the board and was a very important, important person. But my sister was the one who'd been on the board along with two of my father's brothers.
Okay.
And they supported her also, which was a key, obviously a key element. Yeah, so that's that. On a personal level, it was hard for me because I was only 13, 14. I was almost 14 when she went and took over the business, and then she was gone. She was gone a lot of the time. Yeah, she did not make it home for dinner. I think because you said it was such a ramp up.
Yes.
Yeah, so my dad, he had like a system and everything, but she was really, she'd worked as a lawyer before, but she was new to it. So yeah, it became an all-consuming thing for her.
Incredible.
By the way, I also will have, when it's the right time, a little surprise, because as you know, again, from my Instagram, I'm cleaning out our attic.
Yes.
Our family attic. So I found something fun up there.
All right, good deal. Good deal. I think we're going to be ready for it. All right, so now everyone has now decided to ask a million questions. Okay. So I'm going to do a rapid fire, because otherwise we would keep you here for hours and hours. So let's just do rapid fire. So I saw 3 questions come in about your sister. You just mentioned that your sister was on the board. She's an actress. She's an artist, right? So give us the cliff notes on your sister. Right? Older sister. Give us the clip notes on her.
Oh my God! Wait, she just called me actually. I'm like, then I sent her the voicemail, right? I was like, sorry, but well, Leslie, and I do think she has a website. Leslie Lewis, Leslie Lewis, Lewis, Leslie Malika Lewis. She is an actor and producer, and most known for a play called Miracle in Rwanda.
Yes.
Beautiful one-woman show that she wrote along with a friend, and that she's produced all over the world. It's raised a lot of money for Rwanda, and also is a really powerful story of a woman named Immaculée Iligabiza, who survived the Rwandan genocide in this incredibly powerful way of emotional resilience. And so Leslie also cares really thoughtfully and deeply about the world. She has 2 children, Christian and Sevilla, Sword, and she lives in New York also. I don't want to do, sisters, it's always, I want to leave her all that, she's public and has her thing. I don't want to do, too, it's funny sometimes about being public as a family, but talking about each other. But yeah, that's Leslie. She's older than me. She's my big sister growing up, and and I really learned a lot from her. She was a really key figure for me, especially when Mom left the house.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah. She seems to be a pillar in the family. She was there to support your mother when your mother was, came in to take over as CEO. She was there to support you when your mother couldn't be there. There was a lot riding on her shoulders. A lot on her shoulders. Yeah. This is why, someone just mentioned this. I think this is Reginald Carter talking about how he's appreciative to be here and get another perspective on his role model, Reginald Lewis. This is a massive treat for me. And I know for all of the, diehard Reginald Lewis fans out here, this is a massive treat because we're getting context. We're hearing about the skinny dipping and these stories that you just can't read anywhere. Like these are gems. I want to just do 5 more questions. I'm going to do 5 more questions. Yeah, Ella's like massive. This is massive. So let's do 5. This will feel miscellaneous, but let's just go 5. So one question that I really like here is Clive Davis says, in the spirit of building intergenerational legacy wealth, how do you ensure that what we build will be sustained and built on by the succeeding generation? So
Mm.
what'd be great is for you to talk about how you are doing that, right? How you all are doing it as the Lewis family.
Oh, well, that is a huge question.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, uh, we well, we read books. Actually, I'm gonna see if I even have one here. I'm reading just. I have. Oh, look, here's just the latest reading. This is. I'm just have this because this is the one I'm reading now. This is not my favorite, but here's just one book borrowed from your grandchildren
Interesting.
that I'm reading. Let's see. Oh, this one. Here. This is my favorite.
Welcome.
Wealth in Families.
Family.
This
Okay.
is just a random copy I have. Paul, if you want, I'll send this to you.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
I'll send this to you. It's actually, I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's in print, although I'm sure you can get copies. But yeah, I'll send that to you. To think a lot, you really do have to think about it and teach your children your values in a way that is which is not obvious. That's one of the big lessons that you may think you're teaching you're showing your children something, but actually you're not. You know, like they might see you if they see you working all the time, but if you never actually take them around with you, you know, while you're working and at an early age, they actually may have no idea what you do. You know, all they know about your work is that you're gone all the time, and then you complain about it at home. You know, so they're like, why would I do that?
Why would I do this thing called work?
Yes, why would I do that? You know, all you do is you complain about your employees, you know, and like I'd like you to be home for me to ride a bike with you.
Yes.
Right. So that's something that that I try to do with my children. We're trying to set up some things like a family council. We just did. We're talking about values and looking to align what our values are. And I mean, literally, we wrote them down. You know what they are and where they are.
And
So
Christine,
that's just
you
some of
mentioned
it.
a family council. What would the council do? I'm curious about that.
Well, so the family council right now, as adults, there are just the three of us, but it's a concept to, if you have things to govern, you know, because we do have like some shared assets and, you know, we have a foundation or other elements. The council is just a structure for how you make decisions, you know, and also like where data kind of comes in. You know, it's just like, okay, well, we have to get this reports and, you know, like kind of look at this. All right, well, we'll have a meeting and, you know, the people who like send us reports, well, I'll send them before that date. And we can discuss them. I think as when the family becomes really big, you know, if you have a point where it's grandchildren or even great grandchildren, some really great families, then the family council might be something that people like get elected to or appointed to. The family council might be in charge of dispersing like a family scholarship fund, you know, which is something that some families set up where someone has said this and, you know, but someone has to go and decide and evaluate like, you know, what's given out, etc.
Super, super. Next question here is Henry Thompson from South Carolina. Wants to know, Christina, your dad often said, keep going no matter what. Can you share what persistence and resilience meant to your dad, mom, and you? Ooh, these are good ones coming in.
Well, I mean, I think it says it all right there. Just never stop. Never stop. But for me though, that doesn't mean banging your head against a wall. You know, so if you so it means don't always go in the same direction, but definitely keep going. You know, so I think that's it, and it can be a mantra for us. It's helpful to have as a motto. One thing though that we've added is that what do you keep going for? Well, to build a more compassionate America. You know, when you look at the speech, it wasn't keep going, you know, to like become richer, you know, or keep going. It's like keep going to build a better society in America, to build a more compassionate America. And you talked about motivation, right, earlier today, you know, and what's your what's your motivation? And it really has to be values based. So we
Completely agree. Completely agree. I often talk about we need to have a higher purpose, and we get to that higher purpose through our values. Values are the rule book to life, essentially. There are rules. So I love that. Next one is from Vic Bell, must be from Detroit, because I see the hashtag Detroit love. Wants to know, Christina, are you an angel investor or VC for Black women of color tech startups? If yes, what industries are you most interested in?
So I do, I have done some angel investing, at a very small level. I have, and I have just decided to become active again, actually, but please don't send me things. Well, or rather, I'm very I'm not active, but so I'm still looking at it, but it would have to be an industry, a business that I do know something about or can understand. And I'd of course look at Black owned, Black founded businesses, women owned businesses. But in a way, almost more, not more important, but equally as important is, is the mission, and how likely it is to, to help with creating economic equity for Black people. Plus, just anything that looks to have promising cash flow would also be I suppose on my list.
All right, done. I think people are still going to message you.
Yeah. All right. Well, you can find me again on Instagram, Christina99.
All right, two more, Christina. So next is Reginald Carter, who's had some great questions already today. Wants to know, what's one thing you remember your father telling you on a daily basis?
Daily basis. Oh, well, I love you on a daily basis. I love you. Yeah, no, good job. Hello. Good night, sweetheart. Every day. I mean, it wasn't a motivational speech every day. How was school?
Yeah. You know, one thing that is already, I think, one of the most resonating moments is you talked about what happened at the dinner table and his interaction with you at the dinner table. It's fascinating because I'm sure if you talk to my boys, Kingston and Liam, they'd say the same thing. They'd be like, this feels like prison. We're trapped here. They won't let us go, right? And I'm quizzing them, and Jill's doing this. And I love that. I love that. And so even though I know there's only the two more, but let me squeeze one in here, is that what are you taking from the lifestyle, right? From the family that you remember growing up with? What have you taken and implemented in your family?
Well, let's see. I mean, one is birthdays. I really love, we have a birthday tradition of celebrating the birthday in the morning. Yeah. Oh. Just us, first thing, and cake and everything. It's all ready, and you get woken up with your cake and the candles and all your presents just that morning. And it's a great way to start the day. And I love doing that. I don't know if this is what people were sort of looking for, but we have meals of the week. Like every day is a meal. Friday is spaghetti and meatballs or spaghetti and meat sauce, which just I think it adds structure to the home. And so the kids really like that. We also don't go out to eat that much, although we do order takeout. And then from a family perspective, though, might like this, putting charitable giving and philanthropy as a real conscious, putting that in the children's minds from the outset. Oh, also allowance, and having an allowance. And I have a whole, maybe I'll have to blog about it or something, a whole structure about like how you give allowance and so that children can start to understand how to spend money and save it. But giving, my son's only 9, but we've started doing some giving with him where so that he can really experience it. And we've done some giving circles. Again, I'm going to be talking about this in my Instagram story. I don't know if you know about them, but it's where everyone agrees to give money to a place that the group selects. And you can do it just as your family, but it's a way of really bringing these ideas into the family. So we did one for a political one in August, where we did Joe Biden. And it was fascinating. It was all of us, my sister's children too, and their father and her. And it was an amazing moment with these teenagers and others that, even though we'd of course all talked about this, right? Like we're all familiar with it, we hadn't come together and really opened it up. And we simply watched his campaign video, like his campaign launch video all together, and had a conversation about why it was important to us. And I learned something about each and every one of the people in the room, who are my closest family.
Right.
Because it's a different context where people, so that's something, the giving. So I'd say the giving circle though is taking one of my dad's ideas, but anding it, because he would, he didn't go to that level of creating an independent structure within the family. He had things that he was doing that he'd invite me to join in on. For example, like his foundation, which had a board that he chaired, and I was invited to join that. But I've taken that and I think moved it into a place where instead of just one person leading, because obviously like I am leading it in that I'm putting the pieces in place, but to make the effect like more communal, about what the group is doing and a form of leadership that's empowering. So you didn't ask that question, but I think that's the and that I've put onto things as the air, and I think that comes out of my realization that, the problem with the great leader model, is of course what happened to me, which is that if something happens to him, I mean, this is like making light of what was obviously the most incredibly difficult thing that's happened to me in my life. And I think that really can happen to anyone, in this way, to have it be so sudden. But I think that that's why in my own family, I want them to be, if something happens to me, I want them to sort of be, to prepare them to be okay. I mean, not that, of course, they'd be okay, but to say, well, if I left, what would still remain now? And like, what remains after you go? And that's really the definition of legacy. And it gives a lot to my motivation, and what's important.
Wow. I just had chills on that. That's an aha moment. I've never actually heard legacy defined that way. What remains after you leave? That's powerful. That's incredibly powerful. Last question. What have we not talked about?
And can I show my thing also after that?
Sure, absolutely. What have we not? I feel like we've covered
not talked about
topics, but what's something that you want? I mean, because this is a special group that's watching right now, and we'll be watching the replay. These are folks who, are diehards. I mean, just so you know, Christina, they not only met periodically, but met as small collectives of, 5 to 10 people, debated out various topics from the book, then met as larger groups, 100 plus people as larger group to then discuss it, and have been doing this for, I don't know, God knows how long, like 2 or 3 months, right? So this is a hardcore fan base right here. So is there anything that you'd like to share that you think could be of value to this group?
Well, I have just some of my favorite lines from the book. I thought I'd be interested. Set your terms up front. Set your terms up front. It's funny. It's not his line. It's actually his mother who said that to him about the his paper route. Remember he if anyone remembers in the chat, but he asks her to run the paper route, and she does, but then she expects to keep the money, and he gets really mad at her. And so she tells him he needs to set his terms up front. And I think that's funny for one, yes, a good piece of business advice, but also, that's his mother, right? But that's his mother, and that was their relationship, and I think it does. So it says something also about, about that environment. And she is an amazing, amazing woman.
Wow.
Act like you know where you're going.
Come on now. Come on now.
Yeah, I mean, he says that to his brother, Gene, because he throws Gene into a meeting. But sometimes it is that simple, right? Sometimes it is that simple. Especially, I think, being Black in business, when you bring the right, energy, and sometimes it's that simple. So sometimes, and then the third, to become a lawyer, one must work hard, right? So I think when you pair the hard work, with it. Someone says, know where you are going. There is something to that too. And most of the time he did know where he was going, right? But act like you know where you're going can get you a long way. It can get you a good amount of the way there too, especially as you're figuring it out.
These three: set your terms up front, act like you know where you're going, to become a lawyer, even though you can insert almost any career. Yeah. Mm-hmm. One must work hard. I'm sharing those with my boys. I'm sharing them with my boys tonight at dinner.
I love that. Oh, I'm sorry. I have a fourth.
Okay.
And this one, you asked about Trump. I will not tolerate racism anywhere from anybody on any joke or anything. This is a line in the book, and I'm sorry, I don't have the full one, but if you go and look, later it goes on to say, I don't care, I'm paraphrasing, I don't care if it's the President of the United States. He actually says that. So those are words to live by, right? And I think to go be, and that really is, I think, why he is such a hero to Black people, and even to Black men in particular. It's those guts, because that is true. That is true. That I will not tolerate racism anywhere from anybody. Like all these people that he went and talked to, it's in the book, related to a guy named Peter Offerman. By the way, my dad, including his name in the book, is a big like FU to that guy. I don't know if you remember, he talks about that and what he said to him. He did that every step of the way. He would call people out, as hard as it was, and how much he needed, the buy-in from white people, right? Because there were that I will not tolerate racism. Period. The end. So.
I'm gonna tell you, Christina, those four, they may end up on my wall. They will. I'm serious. Those
Let's do a poster.
Done. So you think I'm playing? That poster's gonna be ready tomorrow. Watch. Hold on for a second.
Do it. Let's do it.
All right, done. And the money will go to Give Black.
Oh, that is great.
There we go.
All right, I love it.
We are doing it. Marshawn said, these are my affirmations from now on. Dia says, please have the poster available for sale ASAP.
We're doing it.
Dia's already mad at us because the poster's not available yet.
We're sorry. We're getting right on it. I love it.
Yeah. All I have to say is, this has been treat beyond treats. Treat beyond treats.
Huge treat. I want to just show you this thing that has never been seen before, and not for years. So I feel you have the first edition hardcover copy. I actually have the commemorative edition. We gave away like all of our hard copies. So I have one original that's at home in New York. But I have this. Okay, so I just found this in the attic cleanup.
Oh my goodness.
This is.
Oh. That's
yeah.
the manuscript.
Yeah, so this is the manuscript of just his writings.
Oh my goodness. Hold on. Fan moment. Can I take a picture? Fan moment.
Yeah.
Fan moment right here.
So I thought you'd get a kick out of this.
Fan moment right here. Fan moment. Oh my goodness. Let me make sure the photo came out. Yes.
Yeah, just to see, I thought you'd appreciate seeing some of his process. So this is it. He actually did some notes in here.
Wow. Okay.
You know, like he made comments. And there are some bits that were cut from the book now that are his. And then here are, because he wrote out parts of it longhand. So this is from his legal pad that I talked about. That's he did this writing. And they put in here just some of some of the notes.
You know, Christina, the chapters.
Yeah.
So are those the chapter outline that he has there?
Yeah.
Are there any chapters that did not make it from his original?
So you know something, I think that not everything went in, but it was redone. I have to look. So to be honest, I just found this.
Yeah.
I just found this, and so I haven't gone through and done the thing.
Wow.
But yeah, there might be.
Man, you know what also strikes me about that is how beautiful his handwriting was.
Yeah.
I mean, how straight those lines are. Do you see that?
Yeah. Although you know something, I realized. So see this right here.
Yes.
This is his handwriting.
Okay.
I think this might be his brother's. This actually might be his brother. So his brother, my Uncle Gene, my dad dictated some of the book. He wrote some of it. He dictated a bunch of it. And as I looked at this again, I think this is probably my Uncle Gene's handwriting.
Okay. This is gems. I'm sorry. I swear I'm not going to ask you a million questions, but I just have a few. What was the original title of the book? Did your father come up with the original title?
Oh yeah.
That was okay.
Okay. That's him. Why should white guys have all the fun? It's right here.
Yeah. I mean, it's there because and that also goes to show you how bold he was to come up with that. I mean, clearly, I remember your mother saying, "Well, he got that that was working at the club, correct?" Or no, was it the grandmother?
Yeah, with his grandparents.
Yes.
Yeah, his grandparents.
But for him to title the book that's just. So then after your father wrote that, is that when this gentleman Blair Walker,
mm-hmm.
So Blair Walker came and then he took that manuscript, okay, and then he was able to do his research from that point.
Yes. Yeah, what I suspect this is I think that this is the binder, a copy of the binder that was given to Blair.
Okay.
So this is like someone went through, I would assume later, because this is photocopies. And they were like, okay, we're going to find everything that, Mr. Lewis wrote, like all the notes from this. And just to be sure, we'll even include like the handwritten, the Xeroxes of the handwritten thing, and organize it and then give this to Blair so that he has this to go and get going. Or who knows, maybe Blair created this himself. But it would be more typical of the staff that they would kind of hand this to Blair.
Yeah, where is that going? Is that going to a museum? What are you going to do with that?
I don't know, but it does feel like there could be, that it could support something like that, right?
Christina, you just found the Rosetta Stone. That's basically what you did. Really. You found the Rosetta Stone. Mm-hmm. It must go into a museum. Mm-hmm. It must.
Yeah. No, I would like that. I would like that. Yeah, I would like that. we think about it. Yeah, again, with the attic clean out and organizing, I don't know if you've seen it, but like what I've been posting is only this much of it because, yeah, this is just, there are boxes, file cabinets. We actually have, and this isn't all, there's actually offsite storage with more stuff that I don't even know what it is. So, but you can donate things to research institutions. So there are different ways, but I do think about it. There's a Jackie Robinson Museum, and but a standalone. It's a lot of it.
That was.
Hey, if you're here to help,
And
anything is possible.
you just gave us. Have you ever had a good rum cake from Jamaica? Good Caribbean dark. Okay, you have.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the question, Christina. Do you like the icing or no? Do you just like the cake without the icing?
I just like the cake.
I just like the cake too. I like the cake. Now, I will say, my wife, Jill, because she's put me on to all good things in life, she's taught me about buttercream icing. Buttercream icing, I love on anything. Mm-hmm. You essentially, for 2 hours, you gave us that good Jamaican black cake. And you just decided to throw a dollop of buttercream on the top by showing us that Rosetta Stone. That was incredible. That was a massive moment. Massive moment. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Paul.
And I'll definitely be in touch on the poster.
I love it.
Yeah.